Hi there. Hi everyone. I am in the kitchen. Sort of in the kitchen. Kind of in the kitchen. I'm actually in a dining room kitchen kind of area. Just got off of a forum, out of a forum tonight for WIZM. It's recorded, and they will play it back on the February 1st, I believe. So it's February 1st and February 2nd. So it's 5 candidates on February 1st. That would be me. I'm one of those. And then February 2nd for the rest of the candidates, which would be everybody else. So tonight I was in a forum with Jessica Olson and Chris and Greg Salieras and Catherine Blanchard, and we talked about a number of issues, the kind of things that keep coming up that I've talked about with people multiple times in relation to, the things like roads and homelessness and police. And the lacrosse center, that was kind of a new one. We haven't had to address issues about what to do with the lacrosse center and how to make it more attractive and how to bring in more people to the area. But some of the same issues keep occurring in relation to police funding and roads, certainly roads. And then, of course, what conversation about the city of La Crosse would be complete without discussing parking on the street, especially alternate side parking. You can't get enough of alternate side parking in the city. So anyway, so that was that. The one issue, I tell you what, the thing that we don't really ever, no one ever talks about, not issues come up ever, and it's surprising to me because, well, let me just back up a little bit. So the last time there was a mayoral primary was in 2013, and it was, I think it was 11 candidates. I believe, something like that. I think it was 11 candidates. And it was, a crowded field. And the one before that was 20, let's see, 4 years before that, so 2009. And those debates, those forums didn't have a lot of really compelling stuff. That was, there was good questions, but a lot of the things that are coming up now were never part of our conversations then. So police services and funding for police services, and then some of the racial issues that we're talking about now, racial justice, was not ever something that we had discussed back in 2009 or 2013. That was just never a topic of conversation. And so it's remarkable that we're now going down the road of discussing the things that we just never discussed before. And some of the same things keep coming up, though. Roads, you can never have enough conversations about potholes and roads. You will never have enough conversations about parking. It's just never going to happen. People are never going to be satiated. They're always going to want parking to be fixed just exactly the way they want it. So, but some of the things like homelessness was really, in 2013 we talked, there was, I believe, some peripheral, I know because I was moderating these forums. I think my dog just got stepped on. I was moderating these forums, and the ideas, the concepts, these discussions about homelessness were really not as front and center as they have been recently. And so it's really remarkable that we're actually talking about those issues. So it's, again, something that I'm super happy to have conversations about. I made my position on that very clear about homelessness, is that we have to pursue a collaborative approach that follow the model of the original goals of the Crosse Collaborative to end homelessness, and that was to utilize all the resources in our community and among these groups like, the medical centers and our governments like, our local city government, but also other regional partners, maybe the City of Onalaska, Village of Holman, and all the other things, because this is a regional issue that we need to work on those, And so really happy that we're engaged in discussing that, but using that collaborative approach and identifying a housing first option, or not an option, a housing first mandate. Really, that's what we have to do. We have to create the ability for people to have a place to live somehow with a collaborative approach. But we have to keep doing it. And this is the thing. This actually is one of the things that we're going to have to really come to grips with, because it's less about really ending homelessness and more about constantly focusing on trying to solve the problems related to homelessness. It's an ongoing issue. It's going to be. That's what it's going to be. It's always going to be it's going to be an ongoing issue. So anyway, but again, those same issues coming up. I was actually going to, and we might talk about this Thursday. It depends on. Hey, Anna. Yeah. Anna's here, but she's not actually on camera right now. She's busy eating ice cream, which is what I wish I was doing. But I'm not.
Planning my workout for tomorrow.
She's also planning a workout for tomorrow. Are we on for Thursday? Can I tell people that for Carter?
I don't think you can yet.
Okay, never mind. One of the things that never comes up in these discussions in these forums is LGBTQ issues. We never talk about it. We never talk about it. It's never asked. There's never, or there hasn't been to this point anyway. It doesn't matter who the group is. And we can talk about, and the conversation will turn to diversity and how do we have a more diverse community, and how do we attract a more diverse community, and how we create more opportunities for a diverse population. We can do that, but it is the talking about diversity as it relates to the LGBTQ community is never something that we do. We never go down that road, ever, never. So I think I'm trying to set that up for Thursday. So during this time, which will actually be not this time, but at 7:30, I'm hoping to set that up so we can have that discussion, because others just aren't doing it. And certainly we're not going to be asked those questions at a WIZM forum, and we're not going to be asked those questions elsewhere. It looks like it's just not going to happen. So I would certainly like to address that. But the typical conversations that we've had to this point, and we continue to have in relation to police funding and to a certain extent fire department funding, and the collaboration with regional partners for fire and EMS, which are really, really important. I really like how these ideas about how we need to find ways to create efficiency and efficacy in first response, among first responders, or in the fire and EMS services. We need to increase efficiency and efficacy by combining services, by having a more collaborative approach. And I feel that is kind of our path for the future, is that we need to be able to identify ways to do that. And if we don't do that, then we're going to, we're going to stay in our silos, and we're going to have our community and surrounding communities really just pouring extraordinary amounts of money into fire and EMS when it's really not necessary. And we can find a collaborative approach such that, for instance, lacrosse fire department can provide fire services to, say, surrounding communities. So say Shelby, for instance. So Shelby doesn't necessarily have to invest all of the funding it does into its service, and we can all work together. Then it becomes a model less of everyone in La Crosse paying for fire response to places in La Crescent, and more about La Crescent and Shelby and Onalaska and Holman, and everybody getting together and basically throwing money into a pot, so we're all responding and we're all supporting each other. It sounds really simple and kind of quaint in some way, but it is something that makes really a ton of sense if you are really interested in having an efficient fire and EMS response that actually saves lives. Interesting to be talking about police services. This was asked at our last forum. That was a conversation that came up about police services and about how we approach the future with the acknowledgement that we have a public that wants more out of police services. We have a public that wants to have, not I say more, but they want to have more oversight out of police services, and that's not a topic anybody can, we can't dodge that. We have to really address that. Part of what's happening right now with the Criminal Justice Management Council and the Crosse County level is that they're looking at, and this is part of a survey that I've talked about before in these live talks, and also posted a link to, I think that's on the website, I'm not exactly sure, but I believe we have that on the website, a link to the La Crosse County, the Criminal Justice Management Council survey on providing, on a creating a new police oversight board. So that issue, that topic is not something that's going to go away. We're going to be constantly faced with the concept of there being more oversight and more a need for a greater level of attention paid to police. It'll be interesting to see how that comes out and how people respond to that survey, because at this point, I don't think anybody really knows. I don't think anybody really knows how to make if you have a complaint against the police, not that you would. I mean, this is interesting because our perspectives are formed by our experiences, and your experience with police may be far different from that of others. And I'm talking about this right now. I'm at this moment. I'm at this moment waiting for news about the arrest of somebody who beat up my let's just say a very close relative yesterday. This is someone who's armed and dangerous, has threatened to kill this very close relative. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about that. I'm reflecting on that while I'm discussing this with you. I'm talking about police oversight while I am sitting and waiting to hear from police that they have apprehended this person, and that in some way removed, at least temporarily, the threat to my very close relative. And so my experience in relation to policing is going to be much different, probably from yours, or for anybody who's maybe being pursued by police. That experience is going to be different. But mine today is hoping desperately that police find that person and they arrest that person. It's been an interesting day. Let's just put it that way. So I think that a survey of identifying whether there's actually a need to provide some level of oversight in this community is probably a really great opportunity for us to at least have a sense of what the community feels, how the community feels about that, or if the community even understands what it means to, if you're one of those who believe that you have been wronged by the La Crosse Police Department or any police department within the county. If you're one of those who have been wronged, how do you make a complaint about that? Not that you would, but I mean, or not that that'll ever happen to you, but do you know how to do it if it does? I have to admit, I honestly, I don't know how to do that. I'm pretty sure I'd figure it out. It's not that I don't think I'd figure it out. I just don't know how to do it. And that should be something that is not ever something that we don't know how to do, right? And you shouldn't have to make sure that you are precise in where you are sending this complaint to make sure that you have it in the right place. Now, we may find out that that is not the case at all. We may find out that people in La Crosse are very attuned to what it takes to file a complaint. I would doubt that. I would doubt that. Susan asks, any thoughts on this de-escalation trainings or other trainings for police? Oh, yeah, worthwhile, for sure. Yeah, de-escalation is key. I think about especially when you're involved in these, okay, let me step back for a minute. Back in, when was it, November of, I want to say 2014, I may have the wrong year there. North side of Lacrosse, Walgreens on the north side of Lacrosse. Many of you know where that is. Police were called. There was a very agitated man there that had come to Walgreens and wanted to know where the sharpest knife was. I don't remember exactly what his request was basically to identify where the sharpest knife in the Walgreens was. And then he went and got that knife, and then let's just say he disrobed, if you will, and then became very aggressive and very threatening. And the store evacuated all except one individual, one lone employee of the Walgreens who was trapped in the restroom. So this one lone employee of Walgreens was trapped in the restroom. The Lacrosse police were called. It was a major response. There was a lot of people there. There was, the ERT, I don't remember. It was a number. Let's just call it a large number of Lacrosse police that were called to the Walgreens for a man with a knife that was obviously in a state of great agitation. And I honestly don't remember what it was. I don't remember if it was drug induced or if it was just an anxiety or some. I don't remember. But I do remember that. And the de-escalation was attempted from the moment they walked into the Walgreens, and this was a while ago. But there was an attempted de-escalation when they walked into the Walgreens, and negotiators were on constantly trying to talk this man down from the ledge that he was on, down from his state of heightened agitation to the point where he was becoming very threatening to the individual that was stuck in the bathroom in the Walgreens. But it wasn't working. And so at some point, this individual, and I remember his name, but I'm not going to use it now. I actually don't know what happened to him. But at some point, he rushed towards police with a knife. Now, for those of you who are not aware of, I don't call it the rules of engagement, but let's just call it a protocol for utilization of lethal force. For those of you who aren't aware, if you rush towards police with a knife, that provides their training says that they can utilize lethal force to stop the threat. In this particular case, that's not what happened. In this particular case, there was a young officer who utilized a less than lethal round. We've heard that before multiple times this year, right? Less than lethal rounds that sometimes that inflict grave damage on people. We've seen those, right? You've seen people with all sorts of wounds from less than lethal this and less than lethal that. In this particular case, this less than lethal round, and I believe it had to, again, all from memory, but it was a sock thing. What was it called? It's a sock thing. It's like a thing comes out of a shotgun, but it's a slug in it. And instead of shooting this man who was charging police with his knife in the Walgreens, they used a less than lethal round and stopped him that way. Now, to be fair, the young man with the less lethal round, the 12 gauge, was covered by other people who had their firearms drawn. And the man wound up they didn't shoot him. They didn't tase him. At some point, they got him to calm down and de-escalate the situation to a point where they were able to arrest him without incident. I mean, obviously an incident there. So that's a little bit. I went down a road there that goes into some areas of de-escalation that are less than de-escalation. But when you get into specifically domestic situations, when there's an extraordinary need, because there's high levels of tension, there's lots of emotion, and there's an extraordinary need for police to utilize any ability they have to de-escalate that tension and that emotion and get people to calm down, put down that weapon, whatever the situation is. That's why the training comes into play. When you're in a situation where you have a very agitated individual for whatever reason, or you're in a situation where there's a level of aggression and you need to get that level of aggression in that situation down. That's where that training comes into play. Does it always work? Nope. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't always work. But it doesn't hurt. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. So, absolutely a fan. still distracted. But anyway, uh, there is the same very close relative of mine who was a victim of a substantial battery and assault yesterday. The times that this person has been a victim of crime, the police were not there to protect her. And they, in fairness, usually aren't. Typically, lacrosse don't protect us. Lacrosse police don't protect us. Police in general don't protect us from crime. Police are there after the crime has occurred often. And then, hopefully, like in the case of this person they're searching for today, hopefully they can prevent an additional crime through an arrest, I'm hoping. But there is, going back to that question, in relation to de-escalation training, I think it's important to understand that there are the role of police officers, what we ask police officers to do is far more than write tickets. We ask them to do far more than investigate the investigation of the crime. We ask them to do far more than take witness statements. We ask them to do far more than hunt for someone who has brutally beaten someone in a domestic violence situation. We ask them to do far more than that. We also ask them to be social workers. I was asked tonight about defunding the police. I hate that phrase because it's so vacuous and unsophisticated. We don't defund the police, we reallocate resources. We allocate resources away from police when it needs to happen, should that need to happen. That's a part of the budget process every year for any city government, for any kind of government where you're taking resources from one area and providing them to another, as you're reallocating resources. If we find that it is the case in the city of La Crosse, then that's what we'll do. But remember that that police, we're asking police to be social workers. We're asking police to be mental health counselors. We're asking police to do a lot more than what we would expect police to do. So if we're going to, when we reallocate those resources, because we probably will, when we reallocate those resources, what we need to do is we need to reallocate those resources and find ways to take those, then we take those tasks off the plate of police. You know what? Police gonna love you. Police ain't gonna care about that. Police police will embrace losing the role of social worker. They will embrace that. They're not interested in doing that. They're not interested in being social workers. I don't think they're interested in being mental health counselors. I'm relatively sure that police are not interested in being a drug and alcohol counselor. I don't know for certain. I mean, there's some police out there that probably would love it. But I think for the most part, I think we reallocate resources away from police for those things and add them to. We'd have to fill in the blank there at some point. I think it's a road we can go down and investigate, and I don't think that is something that is something we should be afraid of. Anyway, back to the question about it's hard to keep this light. Back to the question of training. Another question about domestic. Working with domestic violence victims, really victims of all kinds. There is, and I honestly I'm not as familiar with this as I should be. So, but there are levels of training that police go through, depending on where you are, that involve that training for working with victims of all sorts of crimes, not just domestic violence, but other crimes as well. So it is some training that police do go through. I mean, I don't think you can have enough. I think with the complexity of what we're asking police to do on a regular basis, you can't get enough. There is not enough training that we can ask them to take and that we can provide for them. Susan asked, what do you think about restorative justice or other ways of lowering higher rates of incarceration? I realize, come on, can I see the rest of that somehow? Oh, there we go. I realize this might be a stretch for a mayor. Oh, no, not at all. And I do appreciate that question. I think that anytime that we can find ways to if we can identify ways to decrease the levels of incarceration, we're winning. Because our levels of incarceration throughout the United States of America are just, it's ridiculous what we're doing. There is, again, remember that this is what we as a society ask of our lawmakers to do. That's why they make these laws. That's why they're on the books. That's why police have them to enforce. That's why we have individuals constantly going through the court system. We need to find ways to any kind of way that we can do that to lower those levels of incarceration. I'm absolutely on board. It's criminal. Whether that be drug reforms or sentencing reforms and finding ways to diversion programs. There's a lot of that actually going on in LaCrosse County right now. We should be doing more than that, but diversion programs as well as identifying what are the causes of crime on the front end. Let's look at that first. Let's look at the ways to solve the socioeconomic issues that create the situation where we have high crime areas, not just in LaCrosse, but areas everywhere. How do we identify what those things are, and how do we address those issues? How do we address issues of poor housing? How do we address issues of poverty? And how do we address issues of poor nutrition, or just the inability to have access to good food on a regular basis? How do we address those issues? Where do we find ways to address that and to head off this constant pipeline to prison that we're creating in our communities? I mean, I think, again, this is to a certain extent outside the bounds of what the typical mayor of LaCrosse generally would do. One of the things that LaCrosse Mayor Tim Cabot accomplished early on in his administration was the creation of the Human Rights Commission. Now, the Human Rights Commission certainly got off to a bit of a rough start, and there was some disagreements about what it was going to achieve and how it was going to achieve it and all the other things that went along with that. But definitely a move in the right direction, and we need to have more of that. We need to have more of a proactive way of preventing the criminalization of just regular people. So, more of that. Online comments, in terms of domestic violence, police need to have more training or a trained person along with them during reporting, which I absolutely would be ideal. It is unfortunate that we're not allocating enough resources to make sure that we have trained personnel with police during reporting, whether that be for sexual assaults or for domestic violence. There's just not, those resources are not allocated to that, and I would love to find a way to do that in the future. A lot of police stuff tonight. A lot of police stuff. Anyway, so if you would like to find out more about how I stand, where I stand, please go to MitchReynolds.com. MitchReynolds.com is my website. We do have a primary coming up on February 16th. You should have gotten an absentee ballot this week. If you requested one, it should have been in your mailbox this week. So please vote for me. And if you did not receive an absentee ballot and would still like to vote absentee, you can still request an absentee ballot. And if you'd like to vote for in-person absentee voting, please think about doing that as well. That's going to be at La Crosse City Hall. That's February 2nd through February 12th. So a lot of different ways to get your ballot in early. Of course, the primary again is on February 16th. So again, more information always at mitchreynolds.com. Thanks so much for being here this evening. I really appreciate you riding along. Yeah, we'll see you again on Thursday. Let's get to work.